The attorneys in the Derek Chauvin trial have closed their arguments, meaning today was the last day of the trial, and now it's up to the jury to decide whether or not to convict Derek Chauvin for murder. Now, Eric Nelson, who's the defense attorney, had an interesting request, and we should show you what he had to say. Let's take a look.
I just don't know how this jury, it can really be said to be that they are free from the taint of this. And now that we have US representatives threatening acts of violence in relation to this specific case, it's mind-boggling to me, Judge.
Well, I'll give you that Congresswoman Waters may have given you something on appeal that may result in this whole trial being overturned. But
So what Nelson is referring to there is statements that were made publicly by Senator Maxine Waters, which we'll get to. I'm sorry, Congresswoman Maxine Waters, which we'll show you in just a minute. But I think it's also important to show you first how the judge responded to it. Is this going to end in a mistrial? Let's take a look.
I wish elected officials would stop talking about this case, especially in a manner that is disrespectful to the rule of law and to the judicial branch and our function. I think if they want to give their opinions, they should do so in a respectful and in a manner that is consistent with their oath to the Constitution, to respect a co-equal branch of government. Their failure to do so, I think, is abhorrent, but I don't think it has prejudiced us with additional material that would prejudice this jury. They have been told not to watch the news. I trust they are following those instructions and that there is not in any way a prejudice to the defendant. Beyond the articles that we're talking specifically about the facts of this case, a congresswoman's opinion really doesn't matter a whole lot. Anyway, so motion for mistrial is denied.
So Eric Nelson is arguing there should be a mistrial because Congresswoman Maxine Waters essentially had some public statements about this, indicating that the jury must find Derek Chauvin guilty. We're gonna show you that video in just a second. But the judge clearly is saying, listen, this can't be a mistrial because the jury has been instructed to ignore the media, avoid the media when it comes to this particular trial. And here's what Maxine Waters had to say publicly, which of course has upset not just Eric Nelson there, but also right-wingers across the country. Take a look.
But what needs to happen that's different this year than all the years before?
We're looking for a guilty verdict. We're looking for a guilty verdict. If nothing does not happen, then we know that we've got to not only stay in the street, but we've got to fight for justice. But I am very hopeful, and I hope that we're going to get a verdict that is say guilty, guilty, guilty. And if we don't, we cannot go away.
What happens? What should protesters do?
Well, we got to stay on the street, and we've got to get more active. We've got to get more confrontational. We've got to make sure that they know that we mean business.
So obviously, I think it's right for the judge to deny a mistrial as a result of what Congresswoman Maxine Waters had to say. At the same time, I do think it would have probably been best if she kept her comments to herself until after the jury deliberated and reached its verdict.
No, I don't even agree to that. So there's only one thing she said that I think is wrong, but barely. So first of all, she said, we're looking for a guilty verdict here. Yeah, the guy knelt on the other guy's neck for 9 minutes. I'm looking for a guilty verdict, okay? That doesn't mean Congresswoman Waters or I get to decide what's in the trial. And it doesn't mean anything about the jury. We're not in the jury, they're in the jury. What am I looking for? Well, I'm a rational human being who has eyes. I'm looking for a guilty verdict because the guy is definitely guilty from what we can see from outside the courtroom, okay? She said we should fight for justice. Is that a problem? I know, well, for Republicans it is. They hate the idea of fighting for justice. They love injustice. But is that a problem for anybody else, a rational human being? No. She said, we gotta stay on the streets. Yeah, that's called protesting. It's protected by the First Amendment. Nothing wrong with that. The only thing she said that is arguable is she said, we gotta be more confrontational. Okay, this is why I thought Trump should not face legal charges for his speech on January 6th. I thought he should face political charges, but he was along similar lines, more confrontational, okay? So, but what does it mean for the jury? Oh, Maxine Waters said something, so I now am brainwashed into believing it? or I'm intimidated by it, or no, it doesn't mean a goddamn thing. And so this whole, look, I went to law school, I got admitted to the bar, I barely practiced, and I was a prosecutor only as summer interns. But from my experience, and I just explained to you how limited it is, but this whole idea of the jury gets tainted, it drives me nuts. You either trust the jury or you don't trust the jury. A judge never gets tainted. A judge can hear everything and they're a rational human being who knows the law and is smart. We think juries are dum-dums. So we go, oh, don't tell him anything. Don't tell him anything. Oh my God, what if they know a congressperson wants Chauvin to be guilty and another congresswoman wants him to be innocent, Marjorie Taylor Greene, okay, or declared innocent or not guilty? So what? The judge can ignore it, so can the jury. Why is the jury some sort of below average person? Then don't trust juries. Make up your mind, you trust juries or don't you? That tainting is total nonsense to me. It's never made any sense. Okay, the good news, if you're asking for a mistrial, that means you're losing. That is Chauvin's defense attorney saying, we lost this case. You gotta bail us out. Because there's no one who thinks they're winning that asks for a mistrial. That's a fact.
So I don't disagree with what Maxine Waters had to say in that video. But I do think that yes, you don't ask for a mistrial unless you know you're losing. As you watch that trial unfold and you watch the insanely compelling testimony coming from medical experts, coming from people that the prosecution brought forward, yes, it appears that they're losing. So why needlessly chime in as a public official, as a public figure, when there's obviously a possibility that your statements as a congressperson could be used against, and that's exactly what they're doing. That's exactly what they're doing.
So,
just don't comment on it, especially if you're a lawmaker, until we know what the verdict is.
I don't agree at all, and I'll tell you why.
Why? What good did that do?
Because
what did that lead to?
Democrats are always told to shut up, right? And Republicans say 1,000 things about Trayvon Martin, not worrying about tainting the jury pool for George Zimmerman, okay? They say 1,000 things over and over and over and over again. The minute a Democrat says something, you better shut up. Yeah, no, I think he's goddamn guilty. And I'm glad Maxine Waters said guilty, guilty, guilty. I wish every congressperson would say it. This idea that somehow the jury's gonna be brainwashed by them, then why isn't every jury brainwashed by the Republicans? Oh, they told them, oh, you gotta go convict the guys, they're all criminals and thugs, you know how they are. Okay, let everybody out of jail, because the Republicans said they were all criminals and thugs. Are we gonna do that? No, we're not gonna do that. So now the one time a congresswoman is actually outraged at police abuse, we're gonna let the abuser go? We're gonna let the murderer go? Hell no. And so I think our legal system, when it gets to like this, the ironic thing here is, guys, I'm arguing for the conservative position. The conservative position is, no, we're not gonna let people off on loopholes and technicalities. And you know that's the conservative position.
I know, but okay. But the loopholes and technicalities exist, so that's my point. Like, why needlessly give the defense ammo when this is the system? I'm not saying I agree with the system, it is the system.
No, and I'm gonna say one last thing. I'm gonna say one last thing. Look, guys, it's all in the media attention. If a Republican went to the same place and gave an incredibly inflammatory speech in the opposite direction, the prosecution would never even consider asking for a mistrial, because Fox News wouldn't have talked about it. MSNBC wouldn't have made a big deal out of it. None of it would have said a goddamn thing. The only reason why we're having this conversation is because of Fox News. Fox News, oh, Maxine Waters, Maxine Waters, Maxine Waters. And all of a sudden, defense lawyers like, maybe I could say Maxine Waters and ask for a mistrial. And the judge is obviously Republican and he's like, oh, this is outrageous what Maxine Waters has said. Look, I don't know the guy's politics, to be fair, but you heard what he said. And he obviously hates Maxine Waters and upbraided her. But it's all driven by the media and their coverage. If she had said the same exact thing and Fox News and the right wing had not covered it, it would have been completely non-controversial.
All right. No, I can't help it. I gotta say it. Look, she said something very specific. We're looking for a guilty verdict. She's not a talk show host, she's a lawmaker. She shouldn't have said that. I get it, I agree with her. But as a lawmaker, those words will be used.
She has no influence on a judge in Minnesota. She's a congresswoman from LA. She has nothing to do with the government of Minnesota. She's a US federal legislator. If she was I don't know, Attorney General of Minnesota, if she was the governor of Minnesota and she said, I'm looking for a guilty verdict, maybe that affects the jury, right? But a congresswoman from LA has nothing to do with the system in Minnesota.
My point is, in a system where technicalities are often used in order to lead to a mistrial, or, I mean, the judge just recommended bringing that up on appeal. So it will be used against what we're hoping will happen. So why do it? Why do it? That's what I'm saying. I'm saying just be careful in your language.
Because she's representing people who are angry and who demand justice.
I get that.
So no matter what we say as progressives, and Maxine Waters is barely a progressive, but on these issues, she's great, okay? No matter what anybody says on our side, constantly, oh no, you shouldn't have said it, you shouldn't have done it, it's your fault, you were too confrontational, you should have just bowed your head, you shouldn't have said anything. I'm sick of it. We should fight back against it. Anyway, look, they're gonna do what they're gonna do. I hope it's not a mistrial, that's good news. And if on appeals they want to use it as an excuse, honestly, they would have used anything as an excuse to let that murderer off if they let him off on appeal. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.